Hi there, I'm Subject 36. Welcome to my studio. Today we're taking a look at a synthesizer track I made in a very 80s fashion, in an ode to one of my favorite composers during that time, Harold Faltermeyor. I'll take you through the creation of the song with the synth sounds that I used and how I molded them together. And then in a second session, we'll take a look at how I mastered it as well. Alright, so here we have the project I've been working on. It's a synthesizer song, a bit of an ode to the 80s and especially to one of my favorite composers during that time, which is Harold Faltermeyor. You will definitely hear the influences from his works when I start this one up. Yeah, so that's the start of the verse. We have also have a lead going on in the verse. Alright, I started this song with working with the brass. This is the sound I started with. One of my favorite plugins, Diva, from German manufacturer UHE. I started out with this preset. Comes with the Diva when you purchase it, if I remember correctly. I just pushed the vibrato a little bit. Since I wanted to play around with that. Worked with a couple of melodies and then I stuck with this 2-note chord melody. And I wanted to work with that one. So I made a bass line to accompany it. And it was faster moving in the beginning as well. And then I stuck with these two sounds that I have here. If we solo this one, this is the analog version of it. It was recorded from my Minilogue, my Korg Minilogue, which is an excellent synthesizer for these kind of sounds. Works quite well with the brass, I would say. Then I also recorded doubles for the brass from the Minilogue as well to accompany this bass line, and also put up a digital one from Diva as well. And working with this, I think it's kind of fun shaping sounds. I love sound works. And I usually start with either or actually. I can start with just a blank canvas and start just fiddling knobs. But usually when I sit down, I have some kind of tendency of a melody in my head and I already know in what kind of category I want to have my sound. And in this particular time I knew I wanted a brass sound. So I started working around with brass presets till I found one that I think I liked somewhat, and then I fiddled around with that. So I use this technique and this approach a lot. Taking a preset and then working from that to get it where I want it. And in this case with the bass, what I did was to set up the melody first with the bass sound, which I don't actually have anymore. I deleted it because I realized I didn't like it and I had already developed it further with these two sounds. So these are actually best of the best, so to say. And they complement each other quite well. And they also complement each other during techniques that I chose to use, which I thought I could show you here. This is the analog recording. If we listen just to that one now. You hear it's pretty bass intensive, right? Some middle register here because I play with the filter a bit. That's more evident in the verse, I think. Yeah. Here I open the filter up. Then I go back. Moving up again. Yeah. So I played around with the filter while recording this. So I knew I had to leave a little bit of the mids in. But basically I just do a clean up of the lows. This is not a real cut. I mean 29.5 Hertz. But then I clean off quite a lot of the highs, but I leave the mids and the lows, especially the lows. In the second sound here, this one, what I do here is almost the opposite. I clean out all the lows. I roll some of the highest highs off, but I leave some of the higher stuff and also the middle stuff because they complement each other in these two sounds. And together I summarize these then into a track stack. And here I have the full sound processing. First I shape the transients a little bit with a transient plugin. Then I use the CLA Mix Hub. I like this plugin very much. It's an excellent plugin. I think it sounds spot on for the money. The presets are really good if you want to work like me. I usually dial in a preset first and then I fiddle around with that one. Here I used one of CLA's bass sounds presets, and then I almost took everything off except some scooping and except some low attenuation here and some high pushing the highs here, the 5K. And the compressor I left on as well. And then this is one of the part of the magics of gluing the sound together. This is a Fairchild compressor which is very famous for gluing together sounds. From the 80s, when you hear a wall of voices, for example, you can be pretty certain it's a Fairchild compressor put to work. So if you want to glue sounds together, this is one of the plugins that you can work with. I think every manufacturer that has been around for some time have their own version of it, and my guess is that they all sound great. I think this one sounds great, and I use it quite a lot. Then I do, and this is more of a technical EQing here, just making sure I don't get too much of the highs. This is a bass line. And just not making sure I don't have build-ups in the lows. So actually, after compression, especially when I have bass-heavy sounds, after compression, it could actually be a good tip to make sure that you roll off some of the super lows, so you don't have unnecessary build-ups there. Then I do a cut around 500. Some sounds have a tendency to build up a lot of some really nasty bloody harshness, which I do not like in this frequency spectrum. Especially in summed up tracks like a bass, I have a tendency to make sure that I don't get that. So what I do is that I do like this. I just play the sound. Let's see here. And then I just go up. Ah, that's just nasty. Then I pull it down. And suddenly, there's Bob's your uncle. This is a special cut, just around 200. This is to leave room for the toms. The 80s wouldn't be the 80s without really heavy and tough, ruthless toms coming in and hitting everywhere. Even in the even in the most soft pop ballads, you would have these super heavy toms coming in. 80s were about power. So I got to leave room for that, and those came out when I analyzed them to be around 200. So that's where I cut. Okay, so that's the bass line and the brass. Then I started working with fiddling on the actual verse sound, and I started with this one. This is from the Mini Logue. I like it quite a lot. It's a clav sound that I used, and I did some processing on the sound as well. As you see, I put tape emulator on it, just one of the standard tape sizes, and some chorus. This is a mega wide chorus, so this is pretty intense. And I did some EQing just to take a little bit harshness off here, and well, just tidying up the super highs and super lows. This is how it sounds. And I recorded this working with the filter all the time to make sure I have the filter where I want it during parts of the song. Then in the second part of the verse, I have this second lead coming in to help out working. And let's hear this one. And this one is actually, this lead is actually Diva once again. It's one of the presets. Once again, I did the small tweaks, not very much, and I removed the chorus from the sound in Diva and I put my own chorus outside it instead. I thought this sounded better in the song. That's also something which is very important to understand. Working with sound, it's not just about the sound itself. You know, a sound can be superb on its own, but within a song it just doesn't work, and then you got to fiddle around with it. But then you can have a sound that works perfectly within inside the song, but when you take it outside, it doesn't sound very nice at all. I've heard that many of these old-time mixes, that if you would solo a bunch of channels, you would really don't understand, like, how does it sound this strange, you know, sounds so fat and full on the record, because, well, that's because the sounds complement each other quite well. Okay, so that's that one, and then I summarize them on the track stack channel. With the mix hub, I do a bunch of processing here, to be honest. I push quite hard on the 3K, I attenuate quite a lot on the 500s here, and then I roll off a whole lot of lows. And I push the signal quite hard as well to get a lot of the table sound here within the mixing console. And once again, I melt everything down with a Fairchild emulator. And the toms, here they are. I used Steven Slate drums here, which I like. I like this plugin as well quite a lot. Fiddled around with a bunch of drum kits, and I ended up using the first one in line to get the right toms that I wanted, and some heavy processing as well. CLA toms set up, and then I do a chorus on this as well, and some pumping Fairchild on that one as well. And then I used the EQ just to find out in which frequency I had to cut the bass line to get the toms to push through. And then I also send everything off to a reverb, a big reverb that I have, and to delay. So, and this is how they sound. Yeah, what would the 80s be without that one, right? I have a sound here which I call guitar low, but it's actually not a guitar, it's just Diva with a lead sound that I worked with. Men in Tights it's called. I don't know if there's anything left from the original sound, and then some heavy processing on that one, so it sounds almost like a distorted guitar. Almost, not quite. Very electronic. But we had a lot of these sounds during the 80s, so I wanted that one as well. After the first chorus, I wanted to make a little bit of attenuation before I started with the verse. This was done a lot in movie music, especially playfulness, and then that's when I also decided to record myself doing some sighs as well. would say typical for the time period. Going into the second verse, same one as the first verse, except I now also push some pads in here to get a little bit fuller sound. These ones rising, 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 and then just falling, and then they rise again. This is during the chorus now, and then, so that's what they do the whole song basically. Rise, rise, fall, rise, rise, fall. And after the second chorus, I move on to something I call a bridge. It's actually a copy of the chorus, but instead of using the brass melody, I put a guitar solo in here. I created a couple of guitars using Diva and their overdrive and overdrive light presets, which I fiddled around with a bit and put them through Logic's guitar cabinet emulator. And I panned them hard left and hard right. I think it sounds quite nice actually. I think they ended up sounding a little bit too authentic, to be honest. I wanted it to be a little bit more electronic, but since I liked them so much, I left them in there. And also, since this is the end of the song, I didn't want a very long song, so I didn't want to have a third verse and third chorus and so on. I wanted to finish everything off here. I want to go to a high beat and then just drop it off. I put some strings in here, and this is just Alchemy straight off preset. '70s synth strings. Yeah, so I think these help a lot in the mid registry, since the guitars are pushing it quite much in the highs. We have the bass line in the lows, getting help from the drums. The kick is very low, heavy as well, bottom heavy as well. So the mids need a little bit more push here. So I thought these strings would help out. And then just fading out and getting more playful once again here in the end. Yeah. So simple song, simple structure. Very much inspired by my big hero, Harold Faltermeyor. All right, so in next section, we're going to take a look at mastering this song. Stay tuned. That's okay. I do hope you liked that. And if you want more of this kind of stuff, please subscribe and you will get notified when I release new stuff. And comment below if there's anything in particular you want me to pay attention to as well. So see you around.